A hungry hippo lost the promotion opportunity for stealing my lunch. I used to think lunch theft was just part of working in a big office. You hear a few people complain, you chalk it up to someone grabbing the wrong bag by mistake. No big deal, right? That's what I thought, at first. There were whispers around the break room for months. People quietly fuming about missing sandwiches, leftovers gone without a trace, names clearly written on bags that somehow didn't stop the thief. But it always felt like background noise, like the kind of petty drama you'd hear about but never really deal with personally. Then one day it happened to me. I opened the fridge and found the spot where my lunch had been. Completely empty. No bag, no note, just gone. I figured maybe someone was rushing and grabbed the wrong lunch by accident. I mean, it's possible. Most people used identical Tupperware or plain brown bags with a strip of tape and their name scribbled on it. Accidents happen. I had even picked up someone else's lunch before, but I caught the mistake before I opened it. Maybe not everyone double checks. That was my logic. I gave people the benefit of the doubt. The first time, I let it go. The second time, I raised an eyebrow. But when I started hearing more and more complaints, especially from people I knew weren't prone to exaggerating, it started to feel like a pattern, something more deliberate. Still, no one knew for sure who was doing it, and HR didn't seem interested in finding out. We were all adults, right? And supposedly, your lunch is your responsibility. That's the line we kept hearing. Looking back, I realize now that was the calm before the storm, because everything changed the moment my wife got involved. And when I say involved, I mean she started sending me to work with lunches that made people stare. And that's when the thief got bold. My wife had recently taken up an online French cooking course. I'm talking coq au vin, boeuf bourguignon, homemade quiches with buttery crusts, the kind of meals you'd expect from a Parisian cafe, not a microwave at work. And lucky me, I was her guinea pig. Every day, I was showing up with leftovers that looked like they'd been hand-delivered from a 5-star restaurant. You could smell the rosemary and garlic before I even opened the container. I should have known I was painting a target on my back. At first, nothing happened. 2, maybe 3 glorious weeks went by, and I got to enjoy the finest lunches I've ever had the privilege of reheating. Then it happened. One day I opened the fridge, ready to devour this creamy white wine chicken dish she'd made the night before, only to find an empty space where my lunch had been. Again, this time it stung. I wasn't just losing food, I was losing art. I did a sweep of the break room hoping to catch someone mid-bite, but nothing. Either the thief had eaten in secret or had nerves of steel. I was pissed, but still trying to be rational. Maybe it was just bad luck. So the next day, I took precautions. Wrote my name in thick black marker, underlined it twice, and stuffed the bag all the way in the back corner of the fridge. Out of sight, out of temptation, or so I thought. Come lunchtime, it was gone again. Just gone. My first instinct was to accuse someone, but I had no proof, no trail, no witnesses. I was stuck. I vented to a few coworkers, but no one had seen anything, and most were just as fed up with the mystery thief as I was. That night, I ranted to my wife, who, bless her heart, was even more outraged than me. She suggested I start packing something less enticing. Basic ham sandwiches, maybe an apple. The logic being, if the thief was only going after the gourmet stuff, they'd get bored and move on. I didn't like that idea. Why should I have to downgrade just because someone couldn't keep their hands to themselves? So I doubled down. Day 3, I kept my lunch at my desk. Not ideal, especially for perishable food, but I figured it was the only way to keep it safe. I planned to eat it early, before it could spoil. But even that didn't work. I stepped away from my desk for 15 minutes to use the restroom and take a quick call. When I came back, my lunch was gone. Someone had walked by my desk, opened my bag, and stolen it right under my nose. I sat down in disbelief, staring at the empty space where my bag had been. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't some random accident. This was personal, and if they wanted to play games, so could I. By the time the third lunch vanished, right off my own desk, I was done playing nice. I marched straight to HR. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, laying out everything. The rumors, the repeated thefts, the steps I'd taken to prevent it, and how it had now escalated to someone sneaking food from my desk. I wasn't angry yet. I was still under the illusion that someone, anyone, would care. The HR rep looked at me with the kind of polite apathy you reserve for people complaining about lukewarm coffee. She nodded, typed a few things into her computer, and then gave me the official line. I still remember the wording perfectly. Employees' lunches are their personal property, and the company is not responsible for lost or stolen personal items. That was it. That was the whole response. No concern, no investigation, no interest. Just a shrug disguised as a policy. I could barely believe it. Someone in the building was systematically stealing lunches, and the company couldn't even be bothered to put up a damn sign. I tried to push further, asking if security cameras had any coverage near the break room or if there had been other reports. Her expression didn't change. I understand your frustration, she said in the flattest tone possible, But there's not much we can do unless you actually catch someone in the act. She suggested labeling my food more clearly, again, as if that hadn't already been done, and then gestured toward the door with a tight corporate smile that said, "Your time's up." The next day, my wife sent me in with a creamy soup, something that definitely had to be refrigerated. No way I could keep that at my desk, so I reluctantly put it in the fridge and hovered around the break room every 20 minutes, checking obsessively. I thought if I could catch the thief in action, I'd finally have something. But at some point, while I was in a meeting, the lunch disappeared again. Just like that. I stormed back to HR, but this time I didn't even try to stay calm. I unloaded. I told them this was ridiculous, that I'd taken every precaution, that someone in this building was targeting me, and that the lack of response from HR was just enabling it. They listened, or pretended to. But the only result was a generic memo sent around later that day. It was some boilerplate nonsense about checking labels before removing items from the fridge and being considerate of shared spaces. And just like before, they made sure to clarify that the memo wasn't in response to any specific incident. They even had the audacity to repost the policy on personal responsibility for lost lunches, just to underline how little they were willing to do. At that point, I was done expecting help. The message was clear. If I wanted my lunches back, I was on my own. So while I sat at my desk chewing on a rubbery ham and cheese sandwich from the vending machine, if you can even call it cheese, I started planning something of my own. Just when I was ready to launch a full-scale counteroffensive, the world shut down. COVID hit. Offices emptied. My company went fully remote. And just like that, the great lunch war was over, at least for the time being. At first, I was too relieved to care. No more button-ups, no more packed lunches, no more stolen food. I worked in sweatpants, snacked from my own fridge, and forgot the whole ordeal. I buried the frustration under Zoom meetings, banana bread recipes, and endless Netflix queues. Months went by. The memory of my lunch thief faded into the background like a bad dream. The worst part of my workday became finding decent lighting for video calls. Eventually, the return to office announcement came, and with it, the creeping dread of small talk, shared bathrooms, and, yes, the break room fridge. I told myself I was being dramatic. Surely, after all this time, the thief had either moved on, left the company, or grown a conscience. It had been over a year. People change, right? Wrong. First day back, I'm dragging myself into the building in stiff slacks and a tie that felt like a noose. I'm sore from sitting in an actual office chair instead of my cushioned recliner. I'm tired from having to smile at coworkers. I hadn't missed, and I'm starving. I brought a simple lunch. Nothing fancy, just something to get me through the day without collapsing. Something I could trust would be waiting for me come noon. But when I opened the fridge, it was gone. Not misplaced, not moved, vanished. Again. I stood there for a full 30 seconds, staring into the cold void where my lunch had been. Not just because I was hungry, but because of what that missing bag represented. This wasn't just about food anymore. This was about the principle of the thing. It was a reminder that no matter how much had changed, pandemics, divorces, remote work, everything, some people still didn't learn. Some people still felt entitled to take whatever they wanted. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, somewhere between my last stolen lunch and this one, my marriage had collapsed. So when I saw that empty fridge space, it wasn't just about my lunch. It was about everything I had lost, everything that had been taken from me. Without permission, without apology, I closed that fridge door and clenched my fists. This time, I wasn't going to HR. This time, I was going to make sure whoever did it regretted it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, turning over every detail of the past year, all the signs I missed. The lunch is gone without a trace. HR's smug indifference. The jokes from coworkers. The way the thief always seemed to be one step ahead. Not this time. This time I was done being the victim. I wasn't going to beg for help or whine in the break room. I was going to catch, this bottom-feeding, fork-wielding parasite myself, and I had just the plan. The next morning, I packed my usual lunch bag, but left it completely empty. Just a neatly folded napkin and a plastic fork. No food, no drink, just bait. Then I waited for the right moment. When the coast was clear, I walked into the break room, found HR's lunch bag, a brown bag with their name in the corner, and quietly removed its contents. I took their sandwich, apple, and little yogurt cup, and slipped them into my lunch bag. Then I tossed HR's bag in the trash and placed my lunch neatly into the fridge, right where mine usually sat. Now came the tricky part. I couldn't be seen in the building. If the thief knew I was around, they might lay low. So I put on a little show. I walked around the office, loudly announcing that I had a meeting offsite and wouldn't be back until after 3. I even tossed in some fake frustration about traffic and parking. Then I picked up my car keys, walked out the front door, and drove 2 blocks away. Parked. Waited. Once I was sure no one saw me leave the area, I looped around the back of the building and slipped in through the back stairwell. Quiet. Out of sight. I found a spot just outside the break room. Close enough to hear voices but not be seen. And I waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. I could hear people coming and going, chatting, microwaves dinging, and then The moment I had been waiting for. A voice. Familiar. His voice. Loud and surprised. What the heck, Kyle, that's... My lunch. My heart started racing. Kyle. So that was the name. Then his voice. Casual. Defensive. Like he was entitled to it. Nah, it's not your name on the bag. Oh, Kyle. You played yourself. Again. Give me that. I imagined her grabbing the bag. Seeing my name written on the outside. A pause. Yeah, let's head to my office for a chat. I had to physically stop myself from laughing out loud. In the stairwell. My plan had worked better than I could have hoped. Not only had I identified the thief, but he'd outed himself in front of HR. With witnesses, with my name on the stolen bag. It was beautiful. I slipped back out the building, without anyone knowing I'd ever been there. For the rest of the day, I worked remotely from my car, smiling through every meeting. I had just turned the tables. Later that afternoon, I got the message. HR wanted to see me. I knew it was coming. Still, I put on my best poker face and walked, in like I didn't already know what this was about. The HR rep sat behind her desk, hands folded, lips tight. I could tell she was trying to look stern, but there was a flicker in her eyes. Maybe annoyance, maybe admiration. She cleared her throat and said, "We're aware of your break room hijinks." Her words, not mine. I said nothing, just raised an eyebrow. She went on to explain that tampering with another employee's lunch, even if it's a switch, is technically a policy violation. She made a point of reminding me that even though HR hadn't taken responsibility for the previous thefts, it still wasn't okay for me to get involved in someone else's property. The irony hit me like a slap, but I held it in. Every ounce of me wanted to fire back. "Oh, now you care? I thought lunches weren't your responsibility?" But I didn't say it. I didn't need to. She knew. And I could see it in the way. She kept glancing down, fumbling through her printouts like she couldn't quite meet my eyes. After the obligatory finger wagging, she shifted tone. "We've identified the person responsible for the repeated lunch thefts," she said, as if I didn't already know. "It's being handled." I nodded slowly. Good to hear. But here's the best part. Kyle, the thief, didn't just get caught. He got caught publicly. When HR confronted him in the break room, it wasn't just the two of them. Half the department had been in there. Word spread fast. Everyone found out. People who had been quietly raging for months now had a name to attach to their frustration. Kyle, the shameless lunch thief. Apparently he was in line for a promotion. Not anymore. HR told me it had been postponed indefinitely. Management didn't want to reward integrity concerns. And in an office like ours, where reputation matters more than results, that's a kiss of death. From that day on, Kyle became a ghost. He still showed up, still did his work. But no one sat with him at lunch. He didn't get invited to after-hours drinks. He became the kind of guy people whispered about in the halls, all for a few stolen meals. Was it petty? Maybe. But he made his bed, and now he had to eat alone. The fallout from Kyle's exposure was swift and brutal. And honestly, more satisfying than I expected. I didn't even have to say anything. The office did the work for me. By the end of the week, Kyle was a social outcast. People stopped making eye contact with him. He'd walk into the break room and conversations would stop mid-sentence. Nobody trusted him anymore. The guy who used to hover around the coffee machine telling loud stories now sat at the corner table, chewing in silence. He tried to play it off like it was no big deal, like we were all overreacting. But the truth was, he had crossed a line. Not just by stealing lunches, but by doing it repeatedly, shamelessly, and thinking there'd never be a reckoning. And when that reckoning came, when everyone realized that he had been the one casually snatching meals out of our fridge for months, it was like a switch flipped. There was no company-wide announcement, no formal apology. Just a slow-motion collapse of his office credibility. He lost the promotion. He lost the camaraderie. He lost the benefit of the doubt. And most of all, he lost the ability to pretend he was the victim. As for me, things improved instantly. Not only did my lunches stay exactly where I left them, but I also started getting knowing nods in the hallways, quiet acknowledgments, the kind of respect you earn not through job titles or overtime hours, but through standing up for yourself when no one else will. Sure, HR tried to take some credit. A few people even gave them praise for resolving the issue. But anyone who knew the full story knew that HR did absolutely nothing until I forced their hand. I wasn't out for glory, though. I didn't do it for recognition or revenge or even office politics. I did it for something much simpler. I just wanted my damn lunch back. And after all that, I finally got it.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.